names as African American and Afro-Caribbean cultures developed, such as Kampananzi or Aunt Nancy. He's got this fascinating history with him because of, well, all the tragedy that Africa has been forced to go through. But he was also hybridized with African trickster rabbit and hare figures to create Brewer Rabbit, another popular trickster that I'll mention again later. We also have fairies, which are from the British Isles and later France. We'll get into them more in later episodes, but fairies are magical creatures closely associated with nature and defined by their inclination towards mischief. Sadly, they can't help it if their definition of mischief is a little bit different from ours. Maybe in a way that involves kidnapping people and keeping them as pets. Greek mythology also has a few tricksters. My favorite is Odysseus. Odysseus is an ancient Greek hero from the epic poems The Iliad and the Odyssey. He stands out among his peers because he used his intellect to solve his problems more than he used his sword. For example, the Trojan horse was his idea. So he's an example of a trickster character that you wouldn't assume is a trickster at first. Like, he isn't really funny. We also have Maui from Polynesian mythology. Some of us will recognize Maui from the Disney movie Moana. He's actually a very popular figure in Polynesian mythology.
I love Maui and Moana.
Oh, it's a good movie. If you've seen the movie, then you'll know that Maui claimed to have lassoed the sun in order to make the days longer. I'm sure we're all singing the song in our head now.
Maybe.
The full story is that the sun was shooting across the sky, and every day was maybe a few minutes long, so humanity was spending most of their time in darkness. So Maui, who was pretty young at the time, decided he'd go and lasso the sun and tell it to slow down. He tried a few times, but the rope kept breaking, which is probably the only issue he would ever have with lassoing the frickin' sun. He kept making it out of different materials, but to no avail, so he decided to sneak up on his sister while she was sleeping, cut off her hair, braid it into a rope, and use that to lasso the sun. And it worked!
Lovely.
I don't know how his sister took the whole thing, but at least the sun was moving at a reasonable pace.
I mean,
I'm sure she was fine with it.
is his sister also a demigod?
I don't remember. I read this story many years ago before the movie came out.
Because that would like maybe give her hair some magical qualities.
She's
Also,
like,
was she Rapunzel? Like, what is that?
I don't know.
Just
How much hair did she have?
I don't know. I feel like in some Polynesian cultures, really long hair is just a thing.
See, but the thing
It's gotta be
is,
very long.
if we're going with the Rapunzel theory, it would have stopped being magical when he cut it off.
I think we're just kind of skirting over the fact that he lassoed the sun. This is mythology. It doesn't have to make sense.
It's okay, Meredith.
We're choosing which elements of the not making sense we want to question, and we're going with the hair because that's easier.
We're only willing to suspend our disbelief so much. He did it, and it worked. That's all you need to know.
Thank you.
In China, we have Journey to the West, with the character of Sun Wukong, or the Monkey King. Sun Wukong is probably the most overpowered trickster out there. He has super strength, speed, flight, he can shapeshift, multiply himself, and he's immortal literally several times over. Like, he took multiple ways of becoming immortal.
That's
because
an annoying amount of power.
overkill is just a word he doesn't know.
This sounds like the mythological version of stacking your character because he's your favorite.
Honestly, yeah. It's funnier in context. So while he uses his strength and combat skills to solve problems or create them, he uses magic to deceive people even more. Most commonly, his abilities to shapeshift, multiply himself, and survive literally everything. And he also has like the trickster sense of humor. Like he makes jokes, he makes fun of people, and he's a monkey, so like it's part of his personality. Also, what a really common thing with tricksters is to have like anthropomorphized animals. So we have the coyote from like Southwestern Native American and First Nations cultures. In some cultures, he's a trickster, but has power similar to the creator. We also have the raven from Pacific Northwestern Native American and First Nations cultures. The rabbit, who we already mentioned because of African American folklore, and Brewer Rabbit. We also have the fox, which is interesting because we have like two very different parts of the world mentioned here. So French folklore has Renard the fox, and a lot of East Asian cultures have fox spirits who shapeshift, steal people's souls, and play tricks. Japan has the kitsune, Korea has gumiho, and China has hulijing. The trickster also became the main character of many different fairy tales later on. So some of the ones I've read are The Brave Little Tailor, Jack and the Beanstalk, and Puss in Boots. The Brave Little Tailor is actually hilarious. Audrey will attest to this. It is just a ridiculous story, and I highly recommend it to everyone.
Hell yeah.
Basically, the Trickster isn't dashing, he's not a warrior, but he wins. I think the best modern example of a trickster is Bugs Bunny. He bears a strong resemblance to trickster rabbits in folklore, most notably Brer Rabbit. I didn't look into this, but it's likely he was based on these folktales. Bugs Bunny is a textbook trickster. He messes with people and antagonizes them without crossing the line of outright villainy, and because he's a cartoon, he plays with the laws of nature. He can multiply himself, and he's a master of disguise, which in this case also involves gender fluidity, as many of his disguises are female presenting. So he's a very solid, chaotic neutral on the alignment chart. In conclusion, tricksters are awesome and probably my favorite character archetype, and I've decided that the Phantom of the Opera is also a trickster, but sad and goth. You're welcome.
It's so true.
That was all excellent. I'm a big fan of everything, and Bugs Bunny also was an unexpected twist, but here we are.
There are so many of these guys. I had to cut the list.
Let's get into highlight and lowlight, and let's start with Nick.
Alright, highlight, I guess, blah, 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 blah. I guess, lowlight, I guess the alien probing.
Yeah, that was not great. Meredith, how about you?
I think my highlight is the introduction of the Trickster, because he's just such a fun character and I love seeing him. Lowlight, the sexual assault was definitely up there, but I'm gonna go with just the way girls and women were presented in this episode. Like, they were really just objects to be enjoyed by men.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And Audrey, how about you?
I kind of had two highlights. The Trickster being introduced, because again, he's like my top three characters in the whole show. And also Sam and Dean's narration, like combative narration. Like that was freaking
That really
great.
is the best description of it, honestly.
And then my lowlight, basically anytime it got a sexual element, I guess. So the initial interaction with the professor and the ghost girl, the objectifying of all the women in this episode, particularly where the Trickster was concerned, and the sexual assaults, all that is terrible.
Yeah. Well, with the Trickster, like, they literally were objects. They were things that he created for his own pleasure.
In which case, that doesn't, I mean, it's not great, but it doesn't bother me so much. Like
it means that these characters don't have rights, but, like, they're still, like, on screen, like, they're still women who are objects.
Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. It's like, I know it's basically an advanced blow-up doll in this situation, but that doesn't change how it presents.
Yeah, exactly. My lowlight was both interpretations of the Starla scene, Sam's and Dean's. Because I think both of them viewed her as an object in a different way. Like, Sam is viewing her as this, like, drunk college girl who can't make decisions for herself,
who can't hold her liquor.
Yeah, who can't make decisions for herself, is so drunk that she can't keep her drinks down.
Yeah.
And not only does he, like, patronize her and Dean, he also, like, doesn't help her. And then for Dean, he's using her as, like, an accessory.
Well, because she is an accessory. The way she's portrayed affects the way Dean is portrayed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Dean is using her and, like, making her look more classy so that he himself looks more classy to Sam and Bobby.
Yeah, and Sam was making fun of her because he was also making fun of Dean.
Yeah, and so I just didn't like that for either of them. But, you know, it is a big note on Dean's performative aspect of his sexuality. Because this is how he views all these women that he picks up, as, like, making him look to Sam.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that earlier. It's right. It goes right along with a lot of discussions you've had in previous episodes about how Dean is enforcing, I'm only attracted to women.
Yeah. And, like, he wants Sam and Bobby to see him as, like, see, I'm with this girl, I'm attracted to women and only women. Look at her.
Like, we don't even have to work that hard to get evidence for this, guys.
But my highlight was Dean's telling of Sam hugging that guy and going, too precious for this world.
I love that one.
I just think it's so funny.
There was a period of time where Meredith and I sent that gift to each other a lot.
We should do it again. Why did we stop?
It's amazing.
Our next segment is Call CBS, which is times when an adult should be calling CBS. I don't think there was any reason to call CBS in this episode. However, I did want to say congrats to Bobby. I'm going to take some of our previous points against him off for having such strong parenting A-game in this episode. He brought the full parent in this one, and that's great for him.
He did amazing.
Yeah,
Good job.
He brought his parenting.
Mental health check. I'm not a psychologist. This segment is based purely on my own opinions. A weekly reminder that if you're struggling with anything at all, please do Joe for help. This week, I actually think the Winchesters were relatively fine, mental health wise.
Yeah, like they were just kind of fighting with each other because they were mad.
Yeah,
that's
and I don't
normal.
think that's unhealthy or anything. Like, I think that's a natural reaction to have.
Right.
I do object to Dean throwing out the word OCD at Sam like that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think they were fine. I think that they were totally fine.
Yeah, but also his like use of the term OCD is actually really common, and that does make it good, but it makes it like less surprising.
Yeah, and especially like this is 2007, so I don't think people were making it known that we shouldn't be using the word that way.
No, like we got to consider the context.
Yeah, I think that this is a case of things just not aging correctly or like for the best.
Also, even a lot of people nowadays still use it like that.
Absolutely. People still do use OCD that way, and they definitely shouldn't be, but I do think you're right. That is very common.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like some people might not even be aware that that is a bad thing.
Yeah, and I just also think, like, even if Sam did have OCD, the way that Dean used that as, like, a negative thing was also just not great, Dean. Just, like, don't do that. But anyway, I think otherwise, not a bad week for the Winchesters. Soul transactions, there was none. Sam's traumatic brain injury, he stayed conscious as far as I could tell in that fight scene. Again, that fight scene, a lot happened in a very short amount of time. He almost got hit with a chainsaw, but I don't think he went unconscious at any point.
Which is shocking, because, like, if we're gonna knock Sam unconscious, we have, like, the perfect opportunity to do it in a funny way.
Yeah, and, like, it was like a 3 on, like, 1 real person and 2 fake people fight.
Sure.
So, like, it would have been a good time for Sam or Bobby to get knocked out, and I don't think either of them did.
Get knocked out by the chainsaw guy.
I don't think he was trying to knock anyone out.
Yeah, I don't think that was his go-to move either.
Probably not.
I was just impressed with the solid punches those 2 girls were throwing.
Yeah, the sexy time girls were really, really good fighters.
Yeah, I would have expected them to knock people out.
Yeah, but no, Dean stayed conscious as well.
Friendly reminder that lingerie is not built for combat.
It is not, but they sure look good. Anyway, recommended rating for this episode. Let's start with Meredith.
I'll give it like an 8.5, 9. It gets points deducted because of like sexual assault and objectification.
Yeah, that's fair. Otherwise, it's a great episode.
Yes.
And Audrey, how about you?
Yeah, I was thinking a 9 as well, because, basically what Meredith said.
And Nick, how about you?
I'll give it a solid 9.5. I really liked it. Except for, the sexual assault things, yeah.
Yeah, poor Curtis. Oh my goodness.
But, like, Bobby and the Trickster kind of make up, like, not completely make up.
Right.
Yeah. They definitely add points.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I loved it, yeah.
So to finish off this week's episode, we have Line of the Week. So let's start with Nick for that.
I think I meant to go with that. You're too precious for this world. That kills me every time.
It is pretty good. Meredith, how about you?
I was looking through IMDb and I thought that like their little conversation about like conjoined twins versus Siamese twins is really funny, and like the way Sam corrected him.
Yeah, that is something Sam does again later. I think Gene uses the word Indian when he means like Native American or indigenous, and Sam corrects him again. So I like that Sam's like keeping up with like what's PC and what's not.
Good job.
But also like that is a little sibling thing to do. Like, no, I know this, and you're clearly ignorant.
Well,
You're
and also
wrong.
like
I'm right.
Sam's all like college educated, and Dean's like barely past high school.
Well, just ask Audrey. I'm a know-it-all.
I mean, I serve it right back being a know-it-all.
Yes, you do.
I'm just not as correct as you most of the time.
Oh, it's okay. You'll get there.
And Audrey, what was your line of the week?
I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but I really liked the Starla thing. Then what was her name? I don't know.
I like that everyone had different ones this week, because mine also was none of those.
Nice.
Mine is Dean saying, just your typical haunted campus alien abduction alligator and a sewer gig. Yeah, it's simple.
This makes so much sense.
Every day you hear about that.
That was a great sum of all the things that we were dealing with. But anyway, that's it for this week. I've been KJ, here with my guests. Meredith, where can the people find you?
Hell. But also, you can find me on Tumblr, Instagram, and TikTok. Mostly Instagram. And if you go there, you'll see lots of really cool drawings of the characters in this fantasy series I'm writing.
And